Welcome to my channel GIC. Subscribe for daily IELTS Listening Test.
Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear a new student, Tom, talking to a student representative called Rachel about university clubs. You now have 30 seconds to read questions 1 to 4.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hi, welcome to Freshers Week. I'm Rachel. Can I help you?
Oh, hi. Yes, I was hoping to find out about some clubs I could join.
Well, all the club stands are here in this hall. What were you interested in?
Not sure. I wanted to do something where I could meet people.
Well, take this leaflet with details of all the clubs and see what you think.
Oh,
It'll probably depend on what day you're free. Like on Mondays, there's the film club. Then on Tuesdays, you've got the climbing club. That's really good. I'm in that. Then on Wednesdays, you've got chess, if you want something a bit more intellectual. But you should look through carefully because all the clubs run extra activities as well as their normal meetings.
oh yes, I see. So it looks like the film club has discussions after the films. I'd quite like to go to those. Then climbing. Goodness. It says here that the university has its own climbing wall. That's impressive. And they go on weekend trips. Cool. And it says the chess club normally just does games with whoever turns up, but it also runs competitions sometimes. But I bet you've got to be pretty good to do that.
Yes, I think so.
And how many people are in the clubs? Are they all really full?
Well, obviously they're all different. So, for example, the film club has just increased its membership from 85 to 125. But I think they're hoping to extend it to 150. The climbing club's quite small, 40 people. And the chess club is fairly healthy at 55.
Right. Okay. So who do I see if I want to join these clubs?
Well, if you go round the stands and speak to the people there, for the film club, that's the events organiser. For climbing, you'll need the club secretary, and the chess club is organised by one of the maths tutors. OK?
Yep. I think I'll start with the climbing club. It sounds good.
Oh, well, as I said, I'm in that, so I might be able to help you a bit.
You now have 30 seconds to read questions 5 to 10.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 5 to 10.
Okay. It says in the leaflet that they get together twice a month. Is that right?
Yes. Oh, you must join. It's really good fun. We go away quite a bit to North Wales, and every year we have a special excursion, usually to France, which is where we're going this year in the spring. The weather's too unpredictable in the autumn.
Wow, that sounds good. But it must cost a lot.
Yeah, but we try and save up for it through subscriptions. So rather than having a huge sum to pay in the month we go, we collect those weekly, so it spreads it out.
Good idea. I think I'll definitely join.
There are quite good benefits you get from joining. I mean, you need that, don't you? And the university clubs normally try and do deals with local businesses, so it's really worth joining. Like in the climbing club, they've got a special arrangement with one of the shops in town. So if you show your card, you can get money off equipment. Don't think the discount extends to clothes, though.
That's really worth it then. I'll go over and talk to them now.
OK. Hope you do join. Oh, and another thing I meant to say. If you do become a member, you automatically receive a magazine once a year. It's quite useful and interesting because it goes out to all the national climbing clubs. And the other thing is, if you come to every session, then you can get a complimentary ticket to the big exhibition that's held in Cardiff every year. So, hope to see you.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for your help.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a presenter on a radio phone-in show. The presenter is talking to a woman who was bitten by a poisonous spider.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Today, we're continuing our Traveller's Tales. On the line we have Amanda Toddington, who had quite a nasty experience in Australia last year. Isn't that right, Amanda?
Yes. My husband and I were on holiday and we were staying at a friend's house on the coast near Brisbane. It was towards the end of the holiday and I was about to go into the garden and enjoy my breakfast. I walked out into the kitchen, slid my left foot into my shoe and felt a tiny sting. It was pretty painless, but I shook the shoe off my foot and saw this tiny spider running out as the shoe hit the wall. Anyway, not being an expert, I presumed the worst, that I'd been bitten by something that was going to kill me, and I completely lost control. I don't think I've ever screamed so much in all my life. We'd been told beforehand to always check our shoes before putting them on, as it's a common way to get bitten. So I suppose it was my own fault, really.
So what was it that had bitten you?
Tony, that's our Australian friend, he immediately asked me if I knew what had bitten me, and I pointed to the corner of the room where I'd last seen the spider. He picked up a jar and found the creature in the corner where the shoe had hit the floor. "It's a redback," he said, and he gently placed the jar over the spider. The funny thing was, we'd been talking about some of the creatures we needed to be careful of a few days previously, and as he said the name redback, the conversation came flooding back to me. In particular, the fact that the bite can be extremely painful. I've found out since that the redback is from the same family as the black widow spider, and it's the female that does the damage, which it turned out was what I'd been bitten by.
You must have been absolutely petrified.
You can say that again. I remember feeling quite confused. I wasn't in a great deal of pain to begin with, and yet I could see from our friends' faces that they were concerned. Tony explained that the venom or poison of the bite spreads quite slowly, so the pain doesn't feel too bad at first. Gwen, Tony's wife, brought an ice pack, and Tony held it against the bite to make it less painful. Apparently, you're not supposed to put a bandage on the area, as this can make it hurt even more. Tony tried to put my mind at rest by explaining that this was quite a common bite, that the hospital would have an antivenom, and that everything would be okay. But I was beginning to panic. We were flying back to the UK the next day, and I really didn't know what to do.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
So what did you do?
Well, Tony phoned the doctor, who told him to check my symptoms for the next hour or two. As time went on, the pain became very intense, from my foot right up to my knee. My husband was on the internet and was reading out the possible symptoms. I wasn't feeling sick, and I hadn't yet developed a fever, but I had a terrible headache, and my foot was beginning to swell up. At this point, Tony decided to take me to the local hospital to be on the safe side. I really didn't want to go, as I had visions of being kept in for days and all our plans being spoilt. But Tony and my husband insisted. When we got to the hospital, I was relieved to see how casual everyone was when Tony explained I'd been bitten by a redback spider. They told me to take a seat and got on with their work.
And did you receive any treatment?
By the time I got to see a doctor, the pain was very intense indeed, and I was getting quite upset. The doctor decided to give me a dose of an antivenom, which he assured me would eventually deal with the problem. Unfortunately, he also explained that it wouldn't have an immediate effect and the symptoms might last for several days. But the story has a happy ending. My husband managed to book us onto another plane 1 week later. And even better news was that the symptoms of the bite finally cleared up after about 24 hours. Within a couple of days, I was back to normal again. So thanks to the spider, we managed to extend our holiday by a week.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 3.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Ronald Jaff with this week's edition of Movie Talk. First, let's look at the films this week in the theatre. The Kid Rides Again, When You Find Love, and Wronged. The last of the three, Wronged, is definitely the best. In fact, one of the best films in a long time, with Henry Michelson and Joanne Seymour. It is about a man who gets a life sentence for a murder he did not commit. In the style of the films of the 40s and 50s, it is a modern story of a man and his wife, wonderfully played by Joanne Seymour. They fight to make people believe Thompson is the wrong man and not the killer. The strength of their love is wonderful even after Thompson has been in prison for 15 years. Of course, I won't tell you what happens after Thompson's 15th year in prison. That would ruin the story. But if you see no other film, you should see this one. The story may be old, but the acting is great, and it will hold your attention from beginning to end. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for When You Find Love. Just another silly story about how boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl again, and they live happily ever after.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Hollywood ever get tired of such stupid films? Yet, on a New England college campus, the star of the movie, Tommy Seal, is a freshman. He meets the 2 years older Stephanie Fool, played by Sally Evans. In real life, she must be at least 30, not 20. Well, Billy, our hero, has had a hard time with Stephanie. After all, he is so much younger. But they fall in love in about a minute, as long as it takes to take a picture with a Polaroid, and they are both so happy, in true paradise, until, that is, until Buck, the star football player, played by Ronco Starr, the only good acting in the film, steals Stephanie away from the poor Billy. He is, after all, a senior and football star, and the rest of the film is about, naturally, how Billy gets Stephanie back, making her remember their love. He shows her that he, not Buck, is the man for her. Well, if you can stand a stupid story and bad acting, then take your 8-year-old child to see When You Find Love. Anyone older will leave the theatre before the movie ends. And finally, The Kid Rides Again, a western about a young cowboy, Kit Barnes, who stops the bad guys, the robbers, the killers, and plain old bullies and helps the good guys. Kit is fast with a gun and never once in this cowboy. Kit is the cowboy who never stays in one place for a very long time, who leads a lonely but very free life. Nothing new on the storyline, but a good classic-style western with good acting. Peter Sells as Kit catches just the right mood. He's an excellent and natural cowboy. There are beautiful scenes of the open country in the West and enough action to hold your interest. A good cowboy film for those who, like me, always enjoy seeing the Old West. And now, before we go on with the news from Hollywood, a word from our sponsor.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answer.
4. Part 4.
In this section, you'll hear a lecture on coral reef. First, you have some time to read questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
Do you fancy diving in the wonderful world of coral reefs, green sponges, colourful fish and red crabs? It is a rich garden beneath the waves. But how much do you know about the corals? Are they animals or plants? What are the threats to coral reefs? Today, Mr. Tim Harford, Executive Director of the Coral Reef Alliance, is going to introduce the facts about coral reefs.
Good afternoon, everyone. Coral reefs are one of nature's most magnificent creations. It is filled with thousands of unique and valuable plants and animals. Over 1/4 of all marine species depend on healthy coral reefs. Humans also depend on coral reefs. These marine ecosystems are the primary source of food and income for millions of people, a vast repository of valuable chemical compounds and medicines, and a natural wave barrier that protect beaches and coastlines from waves and storms. Coral is actually the exoskeletons of coral polyps. Made from limestone, these skeletons build up over time, forming the reef. New corals are born each April. At a certain hour, on a certain night, mature corals suddenly release clouds of eggs and sperm into the sea. After the fertilized eggs take root on the seafloor, they can grow up to 15 centimeters per year. Coral reefs are present in the waters of over 100 countries. These are warm, 18 to 29 degrees centigrade, shallow, sunny regions primarily between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. Only clear, warm salt water can support a coral reef. And because sunlight is crucial to the reef's survival, the water must also be shallow. The algae that grow on coral provide much of the coral's food. In deeper water, algae cannot get the sunlight they need to grow. Most coral reefs are in the tropics because natural conditions there are perfect. In their modern form, coral reefs have thrived on Earth for over 50 million years. In recent years, however, more than 11% of the world's reefs have been lost, with another 16% severely damaged during the El Niño event in 1998. Up to 32% of coral reefs may be destroyed by human activities in the next 30 years if we do not take action now. Corals and coral reefs are extremely sensitive. Slight changes in the reef environment may have detrimental effects on the health of entire coral colonies. These changes may be due to a variety of factors. One of the greatest threats to coral reefs is human expansion or development. As human population increases, so does the harvest of resources from the sea. Due to overfishing, reef fish populations have been greatly decreased in some areas of the world. The removal of large numbers of reef fish has caused the coral reef ecosystems to become unbalanced. As we know, corals are also very popular as decorations. A large amount of the most healthy corals are selected by commercial collectors. They sell the corals to souvenir shops, where a large number of tourists wait to purchase them as decorations or souvenirs. Coral reefs also receive much damage from both commercial and private vessels. The leakage of fuels into the water and the occurrence of spills by large tankers are extremely damaging to local corals. Although much of the coral reef's degradation is directly blamed on human impact, there are several natural disturbances which cause significant damage to coral reefs. The most recognized of these events are hurricanes or typhoons, which bring powerful waves to the tropics. These storm waves cause large corals to break apart and scatter fragments about the reefs. Home to a diverse community of creatures, coral reefs are underwater treasure chests of colour and activity. Predators and prey swim and crawl among the coral in nature's never-ending dance of life and death. This lively, fascinating world beneath the waves is just waiting to be explored.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe GIC IELTS.